if you're trying to create a massive impact, number one, you need a team. But number two, you need an environment for that team to grow and blossom into a beautiful butterfly. Today, I got one of my coaches with me that has grown so rapidly over the past 2 years that I had to get you in here because I think, one, you have a very special lens on noticing the differences of growth environments and environments where you don't thrive. In today's guest, I got my dog here with me. I got Coach Mark. Mark, welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Okay, so let's get into this because we just shot like a solid 15 minutes and it just disappeared.
It just didn't record.
So we're gonna make it happen, but it's perfect. We'll need it. So let's go right into the topic because I know we have 40 plus minutes and then you have to bang out a mile really, really quick. No biggie.
Yeah, no biggie.
So I want to talk about the environments of growth and then the environments where there's not growing.
Yeah.
And you've been part of both teams. So first I want to unlock kind of what the environments were like in the past where you didn't grow. And then we'll shift and go into environments where you did grow.
I would say definitely, like, I'm talking about specifically just gym atmospheres, not necessarily like other jobs I've been in, but some of the past gym teams were just mano a mano, like out for blood. I'm going to be the better coach. I'm not going to talk to you. You're not going to talk to me. Like it was very like cutthroat. I don't care about helping you out. You're not going to care about helping me out. It was very much, I want to be out for myself. And it sucked. Yeah, honestly, it sucked. It wasn't a fun environment because you always felt like you needed to battle the person next to you, the coach next to you. If they said something that you didn't agree with, you would almost like attack them in front of a member of like, hey, I don't think that's the way you're supposed to do it. Or you would say it in the next class, like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. And and that was everybody. Everybody did that.
Yeah, it's very competitive.
It's very competitive. And it didn't lead to it didn't lead anywhere. It basically was like, well, one coach is telling me one thing and another coach is telling me another. And then you started to, wonder why classes weren't building, why gyms were shutting down, why, honestly, I felt there were times where I was like, I need to leave this gym. Like, I can't stay here. Like, I need to go somewhere else.
I think the nature of competition is separation, right? You're separating yourself from the best and the worst. So if you create this environment in your team where it's extremely competitive, you're going to naturally divide. Just like what you said, you're like, people were just out for themselves. And eventually members were starting to disappear. Coaches started to disappear because that's what the environment creates.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with competition. I think you can get pretty far with competition. But one of our values for us is at the highest level of competition requires collaboration. So I think a lot of times when people compete, they're only beating that next person. But if you start utilizing and leveraging each other's knowledge, you can do so much.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy, Mark. You've done so much mobility the past few years that I'm just like, every time I see you do something, I'm like, stolen. And I use it for my clients. And I think you've done it a few times too. It's like, wait, I can steal things that trainers do that can bring value to my people. I was like, absolutely. I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you're not leveraging others people's like skill sets and value and nuggets and then turning it into yours. So that's like, I'm glad that you shared that because competition is cool. There might be cultures that do that, but understand there is a backlash on how that can be pretty destructive.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're, and that's the thing is the competition is great when everybody is there to help each other out. Like, yes, you're still competing with the person. It's like when, if you go to run a race and you see somebody like roll an ankle, you're not like, ha, 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 sucks for you. I'm going to beat you. No, you care about the person. You still want to beat them.
Yeah.
Like the moment that you're like, hey, bro, are you okay? or like, girl, are you okay? Like, is everything good? You
Mm-hmm.
roll an ankle, can you still walk? And they're like, oh yeah, man, I can still walk. All right, cool. Now I'm going right back to, game mode.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the caring and the trust, the collaboration with the other teammates. If you don't have that, then it's going to cause separation for sure.
Beautiful. Give me another one, because we were just talking about like how crazy you are. Every time I tell you a task, you're like, Royce, why? Like, why? Give me all of the reasons why. And I'm,
Yeah.
Mark, just do it. But then as I started to get to know you a little bit more in your past environments, communication wasn't even there. I
Yeah.
want you to touch up on that, how important it is to communicate from both ends,
Yeah.
right? So from employer to employee, employee to employer. Why is that important? Like, why, in terms of just growth?
Well, just in one of my past experiences, there was a job opportunity with friends, so people
Mm-hmm.
that I went to college with and that I had relationships with,
Mm-hmm.
and we entered a business, of them wanting to hire me as a head coach. They knew that I was experienced and they wanted to get me out. And there were assumptions and expectations that were had on both sides. So from employer to employee, and then also
Mm-hmm.
me to the owners of, hey, this is what you're going to do. And I came out, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be a head coach.
Yeah.
This is what I thought, and my expectations was I was going to run the classes. I was going to be the guy that everybody talks about with programming, and to go forward or that, and coaching other coaches
Mm-hmm.
if and when we got to a place where we had multiple coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought my role was. And then they were like, oh no, man, we need you to do marketing. We
Yeah.
need you to print out flyers. We need you to go door to door. We need you to go
Sales.
to a bunch of restaurants and other places to market us. Oh, and we also need you to do back end, and you need to do a full deep clean of the gym every day. And hey, I need you to help sell supplements because we're bringing a supplement shop in. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Thought I was just gonna
Yeah, I
coach.
was like, man, I thought I was coming out here to be a head coach and to coach and develop a program,
Mm-hmm.
not basically run the gym and then all they do is back end stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where I was like, oh man, like this was not what I expected. And
Mm-hmm.
I assumed certain roles, and
Yeah.
then vice versa is they assumed certain things that, I was about to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's not part of my job title. And then it became this weird, chaotic, you do this, I do that. We're telling
Mm-hmm.
you to do this, and you're not filling to your potential. And
Yeah.
it got very muddy and chaotic.
It just got toxic.
And
Yeah.
honestly, all it could have been solved was communicate more.
And I want to touch up on this
Yeah.
because in the past, now I'm replaying it from how my dad would scold me and teach me things. You know, he was like, "Hey, I need you to do this," and then I would say, "Why?"
Yeah.
And you know what he'd say? "Just because I said
Said so.
so." And that it seems like a small detail, but I started projecting that into you guys. And here's how you can break somebody like me that has this false belief that everyone should know is you just constantly ask for more. So when I brought you in my team, the amount of questions you were asking me, that by the way is what makes you very, very special. At first, I felt like I was being attacked. It was like, what do you mean? But in reality, it was just an invitation that you wanted to make sure you got the job done right. And we were both on the same page. And I started to lens it differently. Mark just wants to serve at the highest level. And it's changed our relationship, one, but it also changed my level of communication too. So communication in terms of environment can be fostered in two ways, which is so beautiful, by the way. And it's why I feel like you're growing at a rapid rate.
Yeah. No, and it's not again, it's not coming to attack anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I just know for me, and the way I grew up and the way that I've almost been taught, even in relationships, of communication. Like if you're not clear on what somebody wants to do, and then you expect them to do what's in your mind, it's going to go south real quick.
Really quick,
and
yeah.
and that's the thing is, like, you were like, hey, I need you to do this and this, or we would talk about something and I'd be like, bro, I don't understand. Like, you used a word or used it in a certain way I didn't understand. I'd be like, hey, I don't understand that. And you would kind of give us like wide-eyed, like, what do you mean you don't understand?
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, I just don't understand. But then
Mm-hmm.
now that we've come, a year and a half now of just asking questions and being like clarifying stuff,
Mm-hmm.
our communication is gone through the roof,
Yeah.
because now it's all like, hey, like, what do you truly need me to do? Do you need me to do this, this, and this, and this?
Yes.
And then you're like, oh yeah, bro, no problem. Or sometimes you're like, you do it.
Yeah.
Like, you do
I
it.
got you.
You go do what you think. And it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So that our first initial conversation was a lot of whys and asks, but
Mm-hmm.
once we started to get to know each other, you actually just started to take things away.
Yeah.
You're like, Royce, you're doing way too much. What can I take away from your plate that's going to allow you to do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. This guy just knows. And I think that's the value of massive communications. Even when it's uncomfortable, it eventually flourishes into a place where, like, Royce, I can take this away from you. I can take that away from you. And I think by doing it this way, it's going to save us some time and some energy and some money and some efficiency. And the gym is going to be clean.
Yeah.
Right. And the programming is going to be spot on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, get out of here. If you didn't approach me from a place of trying to communicate and ask those questions for clarity, we both wouldn't grow.
No, yeah.
Which is massive. Okay, so now what we know, what was the elements that were missing and possibly some of the elements that were there, let's contrast it, because I think you've blossomed into this amazing trainer, amazing coach, amazing leader, a courageous leader just over the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think you're growing more now than you've done in other environments?
I mean, let's be honest, Tote from the top, man, give
Mm-hmm.
you all the credit. You have a growth mindset, and I think that just trickles down for sure. Mm-hmm. I think if the top person is not willing to grow, the other people aren't willing to grow. So 100%, like, having just from the top down, the owner, the CEO, whatever it is having them be in a growth mindset. Because if they don't, that's like a huge red flag. Like, especially if you're about to walk into a place, a business, mm-hmm. If you know that you just have that feeling that owner is not willing to grow, they're kind of like stubborn and stuck, mm-hmm. man, that's a huge red flag. But like that, I think, started off this massive growth in my life. And honestly, it was the communication. We always talk about asking questions to get to know the person. Mm-hmm. You asked a bunch of questions to me. And some of the questions were, now that I know you, mm-hmm. some of the questions were a little cattle prod, and, a little like, hey, come stingers. On, like little stingers, like, hey, man, like, why aren't you doing this? Or, hey, why do you think your class is not growing, or something like that? And I think that really started to, like, light a fire under me of like, all right, you need to get uncomfortable and you need to look for the next thing to chase after. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I would say number 2 was just the repetitive practice, the routine of mm-hmm. trying to grow yourself. And I just mentioned this a couple of weeks ago with my wife, mm-hmm. was the fact that, like, on my runs or on my walk with my baby girl, I'm listening to books.
Yeah.
I would have never done that if I didn't have a routine of waking up in the morning, going out and listening. I probably wouldn't be where I am now, mm-hmm. just from that routine.
Yeah.
And that routine is, like, honestly helped me a lot, because I notice if I take a week off,
yeah,
dang, man, my, like, how I talk, my classes, even in my relationships at home, they're not as smooth. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's conflict there. And it's funny is how, and it could just be a random book. Like, I'm listening to the David Goggins, You Can't Hurt Me book. Mm-hmm. And that's not on relationships or anything like that. Yeah. But if I'm not keeping in that routine, I feel like there's more conflict and less growth.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Because remember, one of our elements was, like, the more you grow, the more they'll go.
Yeah.
that was a big thing that I didn't understand going into it because I wasn't always growing, Mark. Like I think if you met me 5 years ago, I think I would have had you for like 2 months, right? So at the moment I started this path of like, okay, I'm gonna read this many books. I'm gonna do this for my fitness side. I'm gonna do this for my spirituality. Ironically, people just gravitate towards it. And you don't have to say anything. Like my process of growing, people would just start going into my classes, they would just go into my teams. And dude, it's one of the underlining things that I want the audience to know, that if you're not growing, you're doing yourself a huge disadvantage in terms of creating an impact.
Yeah.
And do it selfishly and just grow for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll watch other people will start to just like tag along. They're like, I want to go on that ride because I want to grow too.
Yeah.
Right. So beautiful. The growth side. Is there any other ingredients that you've noticed that creates that type of environment?
I mean, we've talked about this before, is, the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Right.
To be honest, and I'm not even talking about other coaches. Like, I'm not even talking about the people inside your work environment. I'm just talking about the people around you that are closest to you. Mm-hmm. If they're not growing, you're not growing. And it's crazy to see that the moment I started growing at a high level.
Oh, we talked about this. I remember.
I didn't want to be around some of these people. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but some of these people were my family.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those where it's like, oh man, it's so true. Like, and you even said it, it's like, if you get to a certain point where you are growing, you'll actually outgrow that circle. And you'll have to look for a different circle. And it's crazy, as I started to outgrow some of those people in my close circle. And then I started noticing, wow, they're not growing. And a coach inside me started talking to them about setting up challenges to help them grow physically, and mentally, trying to push them. There was a neighbor across the street that I was talked to every day. And I'm like, hey, bro, it's like, you're going to have a little baby coming in soon, just like I just did. It's like, bro, get out there in the garage, do something that's challenging while you're already going through a challenging time. Wow. And he was all like, bro, you don't even understand how much I needed that. And the baby wasn't even there. He didn't even start the challenge. He just was like, I just didn't even think anybody cared that much to challenge me and to help me grow. And it's all like, well, I see you every day. I talk to you every day. If I'm growing, I want you to grow.
Listen, if you're trying to lose weight, but you're just frustrated because you just can't seem to see any results, we would love to help you out. Now, we've been helping thousands of our athletes over the course of a decade by crafting personalized programs that are not only sustainable, but also effective. Now, if you're ready to transform your health, click on the show notes below, book a call with one of our coaches. We'd love to help you out. Now back to the show. Peace. Yeah. So he grew with you.
Oh, he started to grow. He's starting to push his limits. And honestly, it's made him start a new business, which is kind of cool.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So you can do it 2 ways. As you grow, you can go away from them.
Yeah.
Or you can grow and they can go with you.
Yeah.
Which I think is super cool. And there's a space here. I don't know if you're experiencing it, but anytime you grow out of that circle, and then there's this massive level of discomfort because you feel alone.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's often talked about. A sign that you're growing so much is you feel uncomfortable, you feel lonely.
For sure.
But I'm like, every time I get to that stage, normally I'm just going to go back to where I was because I got some friends back there. I stay put, I stay grounded, and I just keep going. And eventually you meet this other circle and you're like, oh, this is cool.
I think that's how I came into being coaching here. Like, to be honest, I think I was already on a trajectory of growth.
Yeah.
And I came in here kind of intimidated by past stuff that I read from, the old gym and Central and stuff. And I was like, man, these coaches they're super high level. I'm going to have to step my game up. Like, oh man, you know, this owner's talking about like onboarding me and like treating it like a super business. Last time I went into a gym, it was like,
here's a key.
Yeah, no, hey bro, like what's going on? Like, we don't need to onboard you. You seem like a good coach, but I was intimidated.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know, you got to be uncomfortable. You got to kind of go through a little bit of that discomfort. And then you notice that it's like it's not uncomfortable. It's actually quite easy.
It is, yeah.
But you have to go through it. You have to go through that pain a little bit. And I think transitioning out of a group into that like alone space where you're like, I'm alone, I'm uncomfortable, but I need to stay grounded. Then you find another group, like I found you guys, and now I've ramped up tenfold. You know what I mean? Like it's now I've grown even so much more that my wife saw like you're a different person, and I'm all like, dang, because she was like, she even said it straight up. She goes, you weren't growing past couple of years. And I was like, oh, wow.
I was like, dang, you're still with me?
Yeah. And I'm all like, man. And then I noticed that all the stuff she was doing, she was growing without me.
Yeah.
But now I think we're at that same level.
It is a different conversation, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, it's a different relationship now.
Yeah.
It's and don't get me wrong. It's not like it was bad before.
Yeah.
It's just now that we're both on the trajectory of growth, we've had conversations about finance that used to be like pulling teeth. Now it's all like, all right,
interested.
Let's go ahead and like, let's dial down. Let's start being lean on our money. Let's start opening up other bank accounts so we can start pushing money around. And honestly, it was just because we were on the same level again. Yeah. Because for a while there, she would be like, hey, we need to do this. We need to do that. And I'd be like, whatever, you know, no, we don't need to. So there's conflict, and now it's smooth.
It is. And dude, I've had hard conversations with my wife because I was the one growing and she was growing. Don't get me wrong. I might have to sleep in the couch tonight if she's listening to this. But I had that conversation. It's like, if I'm growing so rapidly, we're eventually going to grow apart. I want to grow with you. And then the moment she started doing that, and here's how it was for me. I was dating a new person every single week. Yep. She had a new mindset. She had a new philosophy. I'm like, who are you? Right? Because I think it can get stale when you're just the same thing over and over. Yeah. When your partner is growing, dude, it's like it sounds crazy, but it's just like a new date. You're like, how? What did you learn? It just changes the game. Well, and entirely.
I think the communication changes too.
Oh yeah.
Because now you have almost like a fresh new thing to talk about, because you guys are both going through the same thing. You're both growing and stretching and learning new things. And I think, to me, that's fun. Like I like when I get to come home and be like, dude, Royce dropped a huge nugget that I'm like, whoa. And she's like, all right, what'd he say? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh yeah, you know, my boss told me that like a couple weeks ago. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like we can go through the same thing.
Okay, speaking of nuggets.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about ingredients here. And guys, I want to be pretty transparent. If you have kids, actually, it's probably kid friendly. But anyways, I'm a big caffeine person. I'm a big coffee and pre-sup person. And
understatement.
Every day I run about 2 miles, right? So, but with caffeine, it's pretty regular. You know it's gonna happen. You have to go to the restroom after a little bit. Yep. But with pre-supplements, sometimes it'll hit you. Okay, and I told you about this, and I sent it to the coaches because I needed some help. I had a delay one. So I'm 2 miles in. It was actually here. So I was running 2 miles, and then I hit the corner, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go to the restroom. So I started to speed up. So on the way down, I started to speed up. And about 800 meters in, so you know where the 800-meter mark is, like it got to a point where I couldn't run. So I would shuffle walk a little bit. I'm holding it in and I'll shuffle walk, but then sometimes the shuffle, and then you would be like, oh, I just got to sprint. I got to run. And it eventually got to a point where I could no longer hold it. We were just talking about this. I could no longer hold it. I found like, where's the biggest tree that I can find so I could get behind it? And bam, dropped a nugget in there, right? was safe. You know, I used this, I used the sock, but it was so, but here's the thing. You were asking me, you're like, why did you do that? And I was like, I'm making the plant grow. And here's the other ingredient that you need for things to grow. You need shit. You need things to happen. You need fires to burn. You need adversities to like all of these things need to happen. And that's fertilizer. That's fertilizer for the plant. We were talking about this. You're like, how do I know which plant that you pooped on? And I was like, it's going to be the big one.
It's going to be the big one. It's going to be the one that has Miracle-Gro or something.
It's going to be that plant that looks huge, and you're going to look at it and be like, that's the one Royce threw down in. Right? So I want to talk about that. Why is adversity such an essential ingredient for places to grow? How has that impacted you in your growth environment? I'd love to kind of share that part.
Well, I mean, it's taking yourself out of a comfort zone. I think it's showing you what's possible or what's on the other side, if that makes sense. Like if you're scared to jump a wall but you can't see on the other side of the wall. Yeah. You know, you might have to scrape your knee, you might have to try to climb. It's going to be hard to get up and over this big wall. But then all of a sudden, you hop over on the other side and you're like, oh man, what else that's what was waiting for me. If I knew it, I would have hopped over that wall sooner. I think that being uncomfortable, being stretched, allows for so much more to come into your life that you're just not expecting. Yeah. And honestly, even if you don't see it, sometimes it'll just hit you and you're like, dude, that is what I needed. Right. You know, it's kind of crazy that a lot of the times when we feel like we need something, we just need to get uncomfortable pushing into that. And then all of a sudden, we're like, that's exactly what I needed. That was the push. That was the that I needed.
Yeah, I forced you a few times.
Oh, there's a few things.
I was like, Mark, I need you to do a challenge this month, right? And then now your challenges I feel like it's ramped up difficulty just the past few months. Yeah. And I want to talk about the adaptations you've had to create, because I'm assuming it wasn't smooth sailing. You're running 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. Things have to break. So through that process of ramping up your mileage, let's just talk about your miles, because you're running a lot more than you used to. And for the audience, Mark was the guy that was like, I'm never going to run a 400 meters unless a cop chases me. And now you're about, after this, you're about to go run 8 miles to your house. Yep. Which is, and you said it in a nonchalant way. It's like, I'm just going to go run home after this. Yeah. That's how weird you are now. Okay. But throughout the 8 miles, was it smooth sailing? What ended up happening in the ramping up to that?
Oh no, for sure. Like, I mean, you set out a challenge. Let's take it back just a little bit. You set out a challenge that I was going to have a new baby, and you were like, hey man, I think you will grow so much if you challenge yourself in an already challenging, chaotic time. And I was all like, you know what? Like, screw this. Like, let's do it. Yeah. Let's find something to do that keeps me active, but challenges me mentally and physically. And that was the rowing 10K every day for 30 days. That led on to 2 other different challenges.
You did shoulder challenges.
Well, yeah, abs. I did the 100s challenge, and then the shoulder stuff. And then, to be honest, because of the rowing, my wife threw out a challenge to me. And this was unexpected, because she was like, hey, you want to go run half marathon? And I felt like I was like, man, I've rowed this much. I feel like I'm an endurance athlete, even though I'm a weightlifter, 100%. I was like, I feel like I'm an endurance athlete because I rowed so much. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then, when we started off in January, so we started January 2nd training for this half marathon. You guys, running an 800 meters was long distance in my book. Yeah. Like, running 800 meters was like, dude, that's a half a mile. That's long. Yeah. Like, the only other time I run more than that is during Murph. And I usually don't even run the full mile. I would walk it. And so when we started, it was honestly, it was like, okay, I did my first mile unbroken for like 2-3 years. And then it was, oh, now I did 2 miles. I haven't ran 2 miles since high school. And then it was, oh, now we're running 3 miles and 4 miles. What started to happen was I got a really good like uptick of like dopamine, and I'm feeling good, and I'm accomplishing almost every time I run is a PR. It's an accomplishment. Yeah. Again, I haven't ran 2 miles since high school. So running anything longer than 2 miles is a PR for me. But then it started to become, my foot started to hurt. Started to get a little, we think plantar fasciitis. And my calves started to hurt.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah. And then my knees started to hurt. Then I'm talking to other coaches that we have here, and I'm like, hey, Nick, hey, Corey, like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And they're like, bro, you're running a whole lot more, man. You're putting so much more mileage on your feet that you've never done before, and you're running out on flat road all the time. And so it started to get to, now I need to, take care of myself. I need to get to that next level of uncomfortableness where I have to now do mobility every day just to continue running. And it also got to the point where now me and my wife have to wake up early in the morning while the kids are sleeping. One of us goes runs, the other one stays, and then we switch. Wow. And it's one of those where there's no other time to do it. We have to wake up early in the morning and go for a run. Yeah. If we want to accomplish this. And that's the thing, is like there's a goal set out. There's a challenge that is set out that is like, hey, I need to do this. Like, I want to grow. I want somebody to say, Mark's no longer the weightlifter. He's the endurance guy now. Yeah. And it's all like, well, how did he get there? Every day, just trying to put in the work. You know what I mean? Like, just try to get uncomfortable. Because to be honest, waking up early before the kids wake up and going and running, especially like one of the days was pouring rain, and I was all like, you know what, screw this. If David Goggins was standing next to me, he'd be like, bro, you need to get out in that rain and run. And I was like, all right, I need to get out and run. Like, I need to go out there and do it.
Dude, I knew this was going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be good. So I want to touch up on something really quick about pain. Yeah. Because you went through that pain. And I think this is where it's so integral to chase something so hard that crappy things can happen. Yeah. Like injuries, plantar fasciitis, waking up super early in the morning. You're forced to essentially change who you are from a personality level to just get these things done. Yeah. For me, just like you, when I started running, I never foam rolled. Ever. The only time that I stretched was when I would demo a stretch. Oh. But throughout, yeah, it's bad. So Nick would get on to me all the time. But because I did so much volume, I was forced to become a mobility person. I started researching how to fix my back, my knee, and it would lead into so many other areas of my life. It would force me to also manage my time real well. I was like, these are the only times I can work out. Yep. And you just start, now all of a sudden I have this time management skill, which I've never had in the past. So one of the ingredients is, yes, put something crazy in there, something challenging. And then understand that there's going to be an element of fertilizer, we'll call it fertilizer, that will happen. Yeah. Which is a huge component. I like the whole water and trees thing. And then you just got to constantly pour some water, pour some light into it regularly, and it'll blossom into something amazing.
100%. Love that analogy.
Because that's what it is.
Love it. I mean, honestly, without pain, I would not be a coach. If the start of my coaching journey was when I ruptured one of my discs in my low back. Yeah. If it wasn't for that pain and going through, was it 2 years of sciatic pain and researching and trying to figure out what's going on, because I didn't have money for like to go to doctors and get MRIs and get, my back fixed. It just didn't have that type of money at that time. I was like, I got to fix it myself. Like I have to go through this pain. And honestly, if it wasn't for that pain, I wouldn't have grown into me being a coach or even me doing what I love to do now. Yeah. That pain had to be there. And don't get me wrong. It could, if I could go back and be like, hey, I don't want to go and have a ruptured disc in my low back. Yeah, I would be like, bro, I don't want to have a ruptured disc. But at the second hand, it wouldn't have given me everything that I've gotten since then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, how many
So
people have you helped because of that experience now?
I've helped. I mean, to be honest, probably hundreds of people with low back stuff because I've gone through it and because I'm still going through it.
Yeah.
Just because I had that injury, 13, 14 years ago, doesn't mean that I've stopped having that injury or stopped having that pain. There's times where I don't keep feeding it. Like, you know what I mean? I don't keep protecting my back. And then I run into a wall of crap. Now my back hurts again. Now there's something that's moved. You know, I got degenerative disc, stuff like that. And so I'm constantly learning through that pain on how to become better myself. And then also I'm taking that knowledge and helping other people, because here's the thing, they're going through the same stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
Mark, there's someone listening to this podcast right now that is probably going through pain and they can't see further enough. Because if we zoom out all the way, you can do so much good with that pain.
Oh, yeah.
So for someone that is experiencing the pain right now, whatever that is, whether it's physical, relational, spiritual, financial, drop it.
Drop it. Oh,
drop
man.
It. I mean, you went through it. I mean, how did you get a just not quit?
To be honest, you have to be curious.
Okay.
If you're not curious about what's going on, you're not gonna get deep into trying to figure out what's going on. Like, you got to be curious about it. And curiosity, and that's from anywhere. Like, why is my relationship with my spouse so bad right now? Why is there so much pain right now? You got to be curious about that, because if you're not curious, you're not going to care.
100%.
But that leads on into, okay, if you have a relationship pain that you're going through, you need to be curious about it, and then you need to start communicating. You need to ask questions. You need to figure out what's going on.
Dude, that's a masterclass. So if you are going through pain right now, just ask questions. And if you can do that, it'll create this ripple effect of actions that'll eventually lead into some form of what you're experiencing right now in the present. Whether that's helping somebody else or eventually even running a marathon, becoming an endurance athlete entirely.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself that all the time, that this pain that I'm experiencing right now is going to yield some sort of fruit. This is fertilizer for a better day. That was like the biggest thing someone's like, I think it was either you or somebody else was like, how you doing? It's like, man, I'm just having a shitty day. It's like, that's perfect, man. It's just fertilizer for tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
For a better tomorrow.
I mean, you even said this. I think you said this to one of our other coaches, Keith. Where it's like, hey, bro, you tore your bicep.
Yeah.
Great. This is now your comeback story. And like, I even heard that from like the sidelines. I wasn't even in the conversation. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. Because a lot of people think that if they're in pain, they're stuck there. Like they're like almost in a hole. I can't climb out. I can't move forward. But then it's like, okay, what is the next step? Like, let's look at the next step. Let's be curious. If you're stuck in a hole, how do you get out? Let's find a way out. And honestly, you find a way out, and then you're like, oh, bro, that wasn't even that bad.
Yeah. Dude, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another big piece, is seeing that failure or adversity and being able to react in a way where it's almost growth minded.
Yeah.
I stole that from one of the leaders because I had financial issues as an entrepreneur multiple times, especially when you're growing different levels. And I told him about my bank account. And he was like, dude, congrats. And I'm like, what? He's like, congratulations. You're in the game. Right. And that's all he said. He didn't give me any tips, but just that reframe. He was like, if he said congrats, that means he's been there before. And this guy has way more accomplishments than I have. So it created that question.
Well, you got curious.
I got curious. He was like, why is this guy saying it's going to be my comeback story?
Yeah.
I didn't tell him what the comeback story is going to look like.
Yep.
I was like, dude, this is going to be such a good story. And it stemmed and it created this ripple effect of him. I think he did a half marathon too, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, how much time we got just to make
That
sure
that
we're
was
we're
that
doing
was
okay?
that was about like 45 minutes right there. So we got a
Okay,
little more.
okay, beautiful. So let's touch up on one of the final questions because I want to make sure you have enough time to run and do all of those things.
Okay.
What do you think are huge separators of someone that is a good coach, you know, not just a bad coach, but some of the greatest coaches? What are some of the characteristics that separate them from the rest?
Um, I think one is just you got to care.
Mhm.
You have to care. Like, if you're not willing to help the person, like if you almost write them off,
Mhm.
you're missing such a potential to lead them further.
Yeah.
And honestly, you lead them further, they're going to be talking about you for years
Ever.
probably.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like they'd be like, dude, this coach got me from here to here
Mhm.
just because they cared.
How do you know they care?
Honestly, you're asking questions, man. Let's go back to it. You're communicating.
Okay.
Like if you're more interested in the person, I think that in return shows you where you can kind of throw in your knowledge, quote
Mhm.
unquote, throw in your knowledge. Like if you're learning me, like, hey man, I've got a back injury, or like, oh man, my back hurts every time I deadlift. You're like, oh, well, why is it hurting?
Yeah.
Where is it hurting? What's going on? And you start asking questions, and it's not something of like you're not prying.
Mhm.
You're just asking questions, and even if it's like every other time, why is it hurting? Where is it hurting? What did you do before that? And then all of a sudden you notice that, man, dude, they're just not moving right. That's all it is. That's all it is. Their
100%.
back injury is just because they're not moving right. So I
Yeah.
think being curious about them and
Mhm.
like really wanting to understand them goes a
Yes.
long way. But also we've talked about this, and I know like other coaches, Madison and Nick, have all talked about this,
Mhm.
of seeing the person's potential. A
Mm.
great coach always sees the potential of the person
Mhm.
and digs into it. And here's the thing, like I have written people off before, members,
Yeah.
where I'm like, I don't think that they go any further.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just
yeah.
never going to learn. And I writ them off because I wasn't willing to look at what their potential was. And
Mm.
I can think about a person in my mind that was coming here that I was like, man, they don't listen to a single word I say. They
Mhm.
argue all the time. They're not attentive to anything of me. And then I noticed, was I asking questions to get to know them?
Mhm.
Was I curious about them?
Mhm.
And then also I just didn't look at what their potential could be.
Yeah.
Like I limited them. And I think that limited me as a coach for sure.
Bomb. Wow.
Mic drop.
I limited them and that limited me. It's big.
Yep.
Stolen, by the way.
Stolen.
Okay. I always steal things from you.
Stolen.
But it's so true. And a lot of times I think when you're asking someone's like, how do you create the skill set for someone to care more? There you can train that. And the way you train it is just get them to ask more questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed as I started to learn more in sales, that's all I had to do. The books that I read, I'm finding these correlations. It's like, wait, 90% of that consult is just me asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
I already do that. This is easy for me. And then and it's very interesting. Influence and sales are the same way. But you can use it to persuade them to do something bad, or you could persuade them to do something good.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand that. But caring, like in one of the ingredients is just questions.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they're being listened to. One, like this guy wants to know everything about me. And that's why it's one of our values. It's our number one value is curiosity.
Well, and I also think that like us as coaches, and this cannot be from a physical coach, like a personal trainer or
Mm-hmm.
a strength and conditioning coach, but this can just be coaches in general, people that want to teach other people. We all have knowledge we want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants it, like we want somebody to listen to what we've learned.
It is, yeah.
We really do. Like, and we want to share that knowledge. A lot of times, though, we always want to just blurt it out to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that doesn't get received well. They're like, yeah, whatever, bro. Like, just get out of here with that stuff. Like, I don't want to listen to you. But then we start to be curious about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find places where we can add that knowledge in. We're like, oh man, bro, have you ever like, I ask 1,000 questions and you're like, bro, have you ever thought about doing this and this and this to help your, you know, to help your running or help your back or to help whatever? And they're like, oh man, dude, yeah, I haven't thought about that. And then you're like, oh bro, let me just unload the knowledge bomb on you right now.
Yeah.
And then you get your coach's heart is filled. You know what I mean? You're like,
100%.
oh, I get to share what I've learned with somebody else. But sometimes you just blurt it out. People are not going to receive it at all.
Okay. Dude, you just touched up on all three of the big pieces of what makes a multiplier coach. And what I mean by multiplier coach is someone you put them in an environment and all of a sudden people just start to like multiply around them like a cell, just replicating over and over. There's people that are pluses, right? They just have a positive charge. We hang out. I get a smile, no big deal. There's people that are negative, where I go in there, I feel like my soul has been drained, right? And then there's people that are divisions, which is like the worst version of the negative, where they just divide so much that they start creating groups in environments. And then there's the most powerful, which is multipliers. And we did something on this a while back. I don't know if you were there, but multipliers, you just need 3 elements. And you touched up on all those 3. Grow more. Mm-hmm. If the person's growing, naturally multiply. Care more, right? And then the last one's give. If you do all 3 of those things, if you have the ability to do all those things, grow, give, care, watch all the people that start to kind of amplify.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And some people are like, I want to give, but they don't know how because they don't have the method of caring.
Yeah. Learning
how to ask questions. So learn how to do all those 3, grow, give, care, change the world.
Yeah.
Which is...
And honestly, we're like, I mean, speaking for all the coaches here, we're all working on that right now.
Yeah. I love it.
For sure.
Okay, Mark. Let's talk about where they can find you.
All right. My Instagram, bearded_coach. Okay. That's kind of the only social media I have.
Yeah.
The only other way you're going to find me, let's get into the gym.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, glad to have you.
Thanks, man.
Enjoy your run.
Yeah, I know.
If you need to drop a nuggie, let me know. I'll get you some underwear or something.
You got me a sock or something. You got to find a tree somewhere.
Yeah, make that tree grow, bro.
There you go.
All right, peace.